Full screen, it's coming. Ok. Atlas of World 2016. Mira, realista con el lag. 2017. Ok. Con la guerra entre el Elder y el Shaper. True, true. Oh, Dios mío, eso fue muy épico ese tráiler. Muy épico. Conquerors of the Atlas. Dude, eso también. ¿Quién no le voló la cabeza este tráiler? Dude. Se ve. Carajo. ¿Por qué tengo tanto hype si esto ni siquiera es nuevo? Ok, a ver. Echoes of the Atlas. Echoes of the Atlas fue... Dios mío, Echoes of the Atlas. ¿Te acuerdas de ese tráiler? La locura. Yo no entendía nada. Me encantó. Todos los conqueros a la vez. Eso es algo que solo se vio una sola vez.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. Thank you for joining us as we unveil Path of Exile's next big expansion, Siege of the Atlas. Since the Atlas of Worlds was introduced in 2016, we have released 3 large endgame expansions, each evolving Path of Exile's endgame in a different way. Today, I am proud to present our 4th endgame expansion, which launches on PC and Mac on February 4th and on Xbox and PlayStation on February 9th.
Okay.
Twitch drops are enabled for today's live stream,
Twitch
so
drops?
make sure you follow the instructions below to link your account and be eligible to earn the Wasteland Wings. We've got a lot to show you in today's live stream, so I'm going to cover a lot of ground quickly. We'll start with a trailer for Siege of the Atlas, and then dive into learning about the pinnacle bosses you'll face as you explore the new Atlas of Worlds. We'll then talk about the new way you customize your Atlas experience. Rewards and
primero se viene el tráiler,
both the new itemization and
después los nuevos bosses,
for endgame items,
la customización del
and the
Atlas,
new unique and currency items you can earn by defeating the pinnacle bosses.
Ok, nuevas currencies.
Then we'll cover changes to how the Atlas works with its new game systems before
Cambios
revealing
en el
the
Atlas.
Archnemesis Challenge League, which launches alongside Siege of the Atlas.
La Liga Archnemesis, que es lo último.
Game balance changes we're making in this expansion. We'll have a Q&A session where Ziggy D asks me questions from the community.
Okay,
Finally, we'll post the full patch notes as soon as the live stream ends. Let's check out the trailer for Siege of the Atlas.
Oh my god, dude, what the fuck? Okay. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Ajá, ahí está la hija de puta. Yo sé.
Cirrus
Ella es culpable.
is dead.
It's dead?
Zana has chosen exile. But the Atlas of Worlds remains a beacon for eldritch horrors. We imprisoned the Elder. We placated the Maven. We've been preparing for the arrival of another. But we never expected
Atlas.
Thor.
Nos preparamos por otro, pero no esperábamos a 4. 4 jefes.
Hunger. Crushing darkness. Searing flame.
4 jefes.
Wrath.
I knew it. Te los dije. 4 jefes.
If we don't stop them,
Dude, es arena.
Everything.
Dude, eso es Doom.
This is a war for our very existence.
¿Habían 3 map device? ¿Qué acabo de ver? Árbol de pasivos del Atlas. Dude, eso es más fumado que... Que cada uno tenga su pequeño...
Here. Stand with us, or we will all perish.
Oh my god, what? Excuse me. Tenemos dos atlas, tenemos dos árboles. Tú ya no sé lo que digo. Dos árboles.
The events in Siege of the Atlas take place after the defeat of Cirrus. With Zana leaving to pursue her own agenda, Commander Kirik has taken responsibility for defending the Atlas and Rayclust against whatever eldritch horrors.
Zana se fue, así que Kirik es nuestro
nueva
Zana.
Katava and then Cirrus. Kirik has moved several map devices to an isolated island in the Kurui archipelago and has established a militia in order to prevent another event like the Cirrus incident. In this expansion, you will join Kirik's militia and will be asked to scout the front lines of the Atlas for threats.
Ahora estamos en la milicia de Kirik.
You will learn that two more eldritch horrors like her or the Elder are on their way to the Atlas. Unlike her, though, their intentions are driven by the need to consume absolutely everything they encounter. You must learn what you can do about these entities and attempt to prevent the existential threat they pose to Rayclust.
Ok, básicamente tenemos 3 map devices por alguna fucking razón y están todos en un solo lugar.
Horrors are the Searing Exarch and the Eater of Worlds. These are similar to other pinnacle Atlas bosses of the past, such as the Elder, the Shaper, the Maven, and Cirrus. You will hunt down these 2 bosses and their sub-bosses, the Black Star and the Infinite Hunger. You will be able to pursue both Eldritch Horrors at the same time, but you can choose which you're pursuing on a map-by-map basis.
Su boss inferior, por así decirlo.
In mid-tier maps, you'll randomly encounter the influence of either the Searing Exarch or the Eater of Worlds. The Maven understands the threat that these Eldritch Horrors pose to her plans. She will modify your map device so that when entering maps, you can choose to add either the influence of the Maven or any Eldritch Horror you have encountered.
Oh, tienes que decidir a cuál de ellos usar.
As you run subsequent maps influenced by the Searing Exarch or the Eater of Worlds, the amount of influenced monsters in those maps increases as that Eldritch Horror gets closer to you. Eventually, you'll encounter either the Black Star or the Infinite Hunger, one of the sub-bosses. You must defeat that boss in order to continue progressing closer to the horror you are pursuing. These bosses have exclusive new unique items.
Básicamente, tú decides por qué influencia irte. Mientras más eliges una influencia, eventualmente vas a conseguir al miniboss.
Finally, in the highest tiers of maps, you will encounter the Searing Exarch or the Eater of Worlds themselves.
En el tier más alto del mapas, eventualmente te vas a conseguir uno de los dos para los jefes finales. Oh shit, ahí están los que mostraron el triple daño.
You can then farm them. In order to do so, you must complete a series of tier 14 or above maps with that Eldritch Horror's influence applied. You'll eventually find a
una vez que lo matas por primera vez, puedes farmearlos. Tienes que matarlos una serie de veces, así como hacíamos con los otros, los Conquerors.
That you slay this first boss, but the item rewards will strongly encourage you to do so. After continuing to farm tier 14 or higher horror-influenced maps, you will receive another tradable key to fight the Searing Exarch or the Eater of Worlds, giving you another shot at their exclusive rewards.
Las llaves son tradeables.
The keys to the farmable versions of these bosses can be rolled like regular maps, but with their own mod pool. This allows you to control the difficulty and rewards even further. Earlier, I mentioned that maps can be influenced by the Searing Exarch or the Eater of Worlds.
Que puedes influenciar el mapa de una o la otra.
In influenced maps, as you defeat enemies, altars themed around the Searing Exarch or the Eater of Worlds occasionally appear where you kill those enemies. These altars give you the choice between 2 options that can either modify your character, influenced monsters, or the boss of the map by increasing rewards but also increasing difficulty. You can encounter multiple altars per area, so sometimes you can drastically affect the difficulty and rewards of a map as you play through it. It's also fine to ignore it and choose not to increase the difficulty and reward of the map if you feel that it's already challenging enough. An example of a modification
tú en cada mapa puedes mejorar, o sea, alterar el mapa para hacerlo más difícil, pero también más recompensante. Y también puedes decidir no hacerlo si sientes que está demasiado difícil ya.
In the last iteration of the Atlas, you needed to use Watchstones to both unlock new maps and raise the level of maps across your
Antes teníamos que usar Watchstones.
This required grinding conquerors and managing the optimal placement of 16 different Watchstones. In Siege of the Atlas, we've removed Watchstones and have restored the hidden maps back to the base Atlas so they don't have to be unlocked over time. We've added much of the power from craftable watchstones to Atlas passives so that you can still access the benefits you're used to without the busy work of managing watchstones. Despite the era of watchstones being over, we do really like the ability to raise the tier of maps on your Atlas, so that eventually all of them are tier 16. To this end, we have introduced Void Stones. You can earn up to 4 of these, one each from the Uber Elder, the Maven, the Searing Exarch, and the Eater of Worlds. Placing Void Stones on your Atlas will raise the tier of all of its maps, eventually making them uniformly tier 16.
Meter cada uno va a aumentar el tier de los mapas y eventualmente, si tienes las 4, todos los mapas van a ser tier 16.
This means that we're saying goodbye to regional Atlas passive trees and hello to a single gigantic Atlas passive tree.
No hay...
Good old Path of Exile.
Dude, no hay más pasivos del Atlas, ahora hay un solo árbol singular.
117 Atlas passive skill points by completing your Atlas. Each different map you complete the bonus objective of grants you 1 skill point. You can also earn some extra ones by completing the Maven's multi-boss fights. Whenever you allocate an Atlas passive skill, its stats apply to every map you run anywhere on the Atlas.
Esto se aplica a todos los mapas.
It's much faster to complete earlier maps on the Atlas, your Atlas point acquisition is pretty front-loaded, letting you quickly establish an Atlas layout that helps you find and profit from your favorite content.
Como es muy fácil hacer los primeros mapas, vas a tener un montón de puntos al principio.
And have created several new ones, like Secret Operations, which turns some of the strongboxes you encounter into a new type of strongbox that drops scarabs.
Hay una strongbox que dropea escarabajos.
Causes abyssal jewels to sometimes drop corrupted with 5 or 6 modifiers rather than a typical 4.
Abyssal jewels con 5 o 6 modificadores.
Guarantees that areas that contain ritual altars will always contain 4 altars.
Oh my god,
Having
dude.
one massive Atlas tree means that you can deeply specialize in certain types of content without being limited to what was available in a specific region. You can increase how often you encounter your favorite content and can adjust how challenging and rewarding that content
Supongo
is.
que adiós Sextans también.
The removal of Atlas regions means that you have more freedom to run the maps you like without being forced into regions of the Atlas that have passives that affect the content you wanted to play. The topic of map drops is also
Eso te permite elegir los mapas que quieres hacer en lugar de quedarte en las regiones en las que debes hacer.
Maps, which results in them finding a lot of items, including more maps. Often, they get more maps than they actually need. Weaker characters have to be more careful with what mods they add to their maps and hence find fewer maps. This new Atlas tree lets you choose how much you want to invest in the map tier upgrade that used to be the Atlas completion bonus, which means that powerful characters who don't need extra maps can instead focus those points on improving the rewards from content they play.
Ahora tú puedes decidir cuánto inviertes en que te caigan más mapas en lugar de que siempre te caigan más mapas dependiendo de cuánta quantity le metas al mapa. La semana que viene va a tener el tree completo y vamos a poder planear antes de que empiece el juego.
Every large Path of Exile expansion needs a new way to create the most powerful items in the game. Siege of the Atlas introduces a new
ya tengo que descargarles un montón de información. Tratando de entender y traducir.
Elder and Conqueror influence system was that while the items were extremely powerful, they had to be crafted using highly specialized and complicated methods. A regular influenced item you found on the ground usually wasn't of much value unless it was a certain base type at a specific
ítems GG con doble influencia tienen métodos muy particulares para craftear y muy difíciles y complicados.
As they were basically
y las influencias que caían solas generalmente no eran muy buenas.
A new system of Eldritch implicits allows you to apply Eldritch mods to already good items that you have, so that you have a lot more freedom to choose how you create your best items.
Hay un nuevo sistema que te permite agregarle influencias a un ítem que ya sea bueno.
As you know, Path of Exile items can have
Wait, estaba en el implícito.
Built into the item based on what type it is, or can be modified with systems such as Vile Corruption. Eldritch implicits replace existing implicit mods, but with a twist. An item is allowed to have one Eldritch implicit from the Searing Exarch and one from the Eater of Worlds at the same time. These implicits have many different tiers and several ways to interact with them.
Puedes tener uno y uno.
While playing maps in Siege of the Atlas,
puedes tener uno de los rojos y uno de los azules, básicamente.
Eldritch Ember and Eldritch Ichor, corresponding to the Searing Exarch and the Eater of Worlds, respectively. These currency items can be applied to gloves, helmets, body armors, or boots, and overwrite the item's regular implicit mods with new ones from 2 special pools of powerful modifiers. As I mentioned before, an item can have both a Searing Exarch implicit and an Eater of Worlds implicit at the same time.
Jesus.
Applying the same type of orb multiple times will overwrite the appropriate mod with a new random one.
¿Y qué onda con
These gloves have a single Eldritch implicit mod which grants you the ability to gain Rage on hit, rate limited by a cooldown.
Rage on hit.
There are 2 Eldritch implicit mods on this helmet. The first one simply grants some added fire damage with spells. The second implicit causes enemies within a radius near you to be unable to regenerate life.
What the fuck? Ya va.
Each mod has 6 tiers of power. The first 4 tiers come from the 4 versions of the Eldritch Ember and Echo currency items, while the highest 2 tiers can only be upgraded to with a special item we'll explain soon. The first tier of Eldritch Ember or Echo drops on all maps and means that any important build-enabling mods are available without having to complete the entire atlas. The second and third tiers come from exploring maps influenced by the Eldritch Horrors, and the fourth tier drops from the Searing Exarch or the Eater of Worlds themselves.
Ok, los primeros caen
You may be wondering
con
how
mapas
you
que
get
hagas, ni
access
siquiera
to the
tienes
fifth and
que
sixth
interactuar con las
tiers.
nuevas
This
entidades.
requires some luck and
Los
planning.
segundos con mapas
The
influenciados
Maven
y los
and her
últimos
encounters have a
tienen que
chance to
ser
drop the
sí o
Orb of
sí
Conflict.
de los jefes.
When used on an item with 2 Eldritch implicits, the Orb of Conflict lowers the tier of one implicit mod and increases the tier of the other. This allows you to manipulate the balance between the 2 types of implicits. The best possible outcome is to have a tier 6 and a tier 4 mod at the same time. In order to achieve this, you'd want to apply the highest Eldritch Ember or Eldritch Echo over and over until you have a tier 4 modifier that you want. Then use Orbs of Conflict to try to get it to tier 6 before using more Ember and Echo to lock in the tier 4 mod of the other type that you're looking for.
Ok,
We have made sure
eso
that
es
the
igual de
power of these
complicado.
modifiers is available earlier in
Oye, no
life
tanto,
so
pero
that you get access to them when you need them, rather than after you need them.
Ahorita les voy a explicar cómo
Also,
se
none of the new implicit
cómo
mods have
consigues
item
los
level
mods que
restrictions that
necesitas.
prevent them from being applied
Que
to
quieres
an item.
tener lo más
There
alto
are
posible,
also
lo mejor.
conditional versions of Eldritch implicit mods that are only enabled when specific types of enemies are in your presence. These ramp up in power as the condition gets more restrictive. These conditional mods are designed for players who feel that they have sufficient clear speed for easier monsters and want to specialize in being even more effective against the really tough bosses where it matters. Items with Eldritch implicits can also have a property of being dominated by one of the Eldritch Horrors. If an item has a
What?
higher
Un ítem
tier
puede estar
Searing
dominado.
Exarch mod, then it is considered dominated by the Searing Exarch. Conversely, if the mod for the Eater of Worlds is higher tier, then it is considered dominated by the Eater of Worlds. Domination matters for 3 new currency items we're introducing.
My God.
The Eldritch Chaos Orb will reroll the prefixes of an item if it is dominated by the Searing Exarch, or the suffixes if the item is dominated by the Eater of Worlds.
Oh my God,
the same is
dude.
true for the Eldritch Exalted Orb and the Eldritch Orb of Annulment,
Si-
which
si
add or
un- si el
remove a
tier
prefix or
de el-
suffix depending on
Tienes
which horror dominates
dos
the
cosas
item.
puedes tener, los azules y los rojos.
These very rare currency
Si
items
el
give you a
azul es
large
superior al
degree of
rojo en
control
cuanto a
over your
tiers,
endgame
quiere decir que está
rare
dominado
item
por el
crafting
azul.
if you're able to manipulate the Eldritch implicits
Y
correctly.
puedes usar estas orbes
It's
que
important
interactúan de
to
una
note that
forma
you
u
can't
otra
apply
dependiendo de
Eldritch
cuál de los dos está
implicit mods to
modificado.
influenced items.
Pero
By that,
acaban de
I
decir
mean
que quieren
items
hacerlo
that are
más
the old
simple.
type of Shaper, Elder, or Conqueror influence.
Acaban de decir que quieren hacerlo más simple.
The Siege of the Atlas expansion contains a
No, se
whole
fumaron de
roster
la
of new unique
vencida.
items, which drop from the 4 new Atlas bosses we have introduced. All of these are powerful uniques, and we'll show you 6 of them today. The Ashes of the Stars Onyx
vamos a ver.
Amulet increases the level of all of your skill gems and grants them an additional 20% quality. It also improves the reservation efficiency of your skills and lets you level all of your gems faster, which is really useful for gems such as Empower and Enlighten. The big boost of quality
What?
is very valuable with some alternate
Más uno a
quality
todas las
gems,
gemas,
as well as
19% de
certain
quality a
skills
todas las
like
skill
curses.
gems. What? Eso no es un C,
The
eso es bueno.
Dissolution of the Flesh Prismatic Jewel changes the way that you interact with incoming damage. While you have this jewel equipped, damage is taken in the form of a temporary reservation to your life pool. If you reserve 100% of your life, you die. This allows you to ignore life recovery completely, since the actual amount of life you have left is irrelevant as long as you manage the timing of your life reservation. The Polaric Devastation Opal Ring introduces a new debuff
Eso es muy
called
complejo, tengo que
Covered in
explicarlo aparte.
Frost, and gives you another way to apply the existing Covered in Ash debuff. This is a solid ring for anyone specializing in either fire or cold damage.
Esto es un
In a
anillo para que
similar vein
alguien se
to Covered in
especialice en
Ash,
fuego
Covered in
o en
Frost
hielo.
causes the target to take 20% increased cold damage and lowers their critical strike chance. The Ceaseless Feast spiked gloves have a new debuff called Corrosion, which you can stack up on enemies to remove their armor and evasion.
O
This
puedes
is not
remover la
only a
armadura y
great way to
evasión de los
reduce their
enemigos.
physical
What?
damage reduction, but the gloves also have an additional bonus that applies when you have stripped away all of the enemy's armor or evasion.
Oh my God, this
We are
is
also introducing a
insane.
pair of very rare aspirational unique jewels, Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh. Each of these jewels drops from one of the 2 new Pinnacle Atlas bosses, and they are certainly unique in that they must work together to unlock their potential. They
Esas son
require
joyas
the
que
user of the
son
jewel to be a
únicas
specific class,
y
and they
necesitas las
roll with
dos
a modifier
para
that
desbloquear su
specifies a
potencial.
random ascendancy skill from one of the ascendancies of that class.
Wait,
If
what?
you are able to
¿De una
equip both
ascendencia al
a
azar?
Forbidden Flame and a Forbidden Flesh
¿Un
jewel
punto al
that
azar?
specify the same skill, and if you meet the class requirement, then you'll be granted that Ascendancy skill. For example, if you're a Deadeye and find a Forbidden Flame Jewel that specifies the Master Surgeon skill from the Pathfinder class, then upon finding and equipping a matching Forbidden Flesh Jewel, you will gain the Master Surgeon skill. These jewels open up many new build possibilities for very late endgame characters.
What?
The favored map system allows you to find more of the maps that you want to play.
Puedes tener
In the
todos
old
los puntos de
Atlas, there were 3
ascendencia.
favored map slots available to unlock in each region. Now that regions have been removed,
Bro,
favored
si
map
tienes
slots can be unlocked
el
by
mismo
meeting various
modificador en ambas
objectives, like
joyas,
completing a tier 16
te
map
dan
or defeating an Elder
un punto
Guardian.
de ascendencia. ¿Qué?
There are 12 favored map slots that can be unlocked. These now apply to all map drops on the Atlas, rather than affecting map drops
No.
in just one region. Each slot provides a 10 times multiplier to how frequently its corresponding map drops, relative to other maps. You can select 12 different maps as your favored maps, or you can put the same map type in all 12 slots for a massive 120 times boost to its occurrence in your drop pool. This is particularly
12
powerful
mapas
once you've
favoritas.
socketed all 4 Void Stones into your Atlas, making all of your maps tier 16, and with a 120 times multiplier applied to a specific map. In this case, the specific map you have chosen will constitute over 50% of all tier 16 map drops. Sextants can be found from tier 14 onwards and are
Shit,
applied to
puedes
Void
tener un mapa que
When you
el
use
50% de
one
las veces te
Void
caiga el mapa que
Stone,
tú
it affects your
quieras
whole Atlas.
o otro mapa.
Because Void Stones come from the highest tier content, we've removed simple sextants and prime sextants, as they can no longer be used when you would typically acquire them.
Ya no
We've
hay
added the mods
sextant
from
ni
these
el bajo
sextants to
ni
the
el
pool of mods that
intermedio,
Awakened
nada más está el
sextants
alto.
have. Because this dilutes the pool of mods that Awakened Sextants can roll, we've increased the frequency at which you acquire Awakened Sextants. Your existing simple and prime sextants will be converted to Awakened Sextants at the launch of Siege of the Atlas. We have made no changes to elevated sextants. With the
Los
new
elevated
Atlas system
sextants
as
todavía
context,
existen.
we have done a balanced pass of all sextant mods. This resulted in a slight reduction to the amount of content or monsters that a given sextant mod introduces to an area. We've removed the Nemesis monsters drop 3 additional currency
No hay más
items
Nemesis.
mod, both because it's busted and because it's incompatible with our future plans for the Archnemesis League content. We've also
Lo
added a
removieron
whole
porque
bunch of new
no es
sextant
compatible
modifiers.
con el plan de Archnemesis y porque está busted,
The
está
general
rota.
intention behind these
Adiós,
new mods is
Nemesis.
that they give a strong benefit while adding extra
Mira,
difficulty.
nos dieron, mira todo
or
esto
reward players for
hermoso.
specializing
y
in having
Nemesis,
other leagues
Nemesis
present
Job
in
está
an area.
muerto.
For
Pero mira
example,
todo esto que
there's
está
a
muy
sextant
cool.
mod that ensures that all breaches in an area belong to Chayula. So if you can maximize the number of breaches through scarabs, map
What?
device modifiers, the Atlas passive
Chabula
tree, or other
siempre?
sextants, then you've got a whole bunch of valuable Chayula breaches in that map.
Holy
With the
shit.
removal of Watchstones, players would have lost the ability to swap in and out Watchstones with different sextant modifiers on them depending on which maps they were running. We like the strategic use of sextants, so we have reintroduced this behavior with a new currency item called the Surveyor's Compass. This can be applied to a Void Stone with a sextant mod on it to itemize that sextant
Oh,
mod for
gracias
later
a
use or
Dios.
trade. This
Okay.
currency item drops periodically and is also sold by Kirak for 1 Chaos Orb, similar to how Einhaus sells Bestiary
Ok,
Orbs.
tú puedes comprar esto
There's no
por un
limit on how
caos
many you can purchase.
y puedes agarrar y puedes guardar un modificador de un
Zanagon,
sextant
you may be
en esa
wondering
joya.
what is
Si
happening
te sale
to
un
her
sextant muy
Atlas
bueno, lo
mission.
puedes guardar y
Well,
usar cuando
Kirak
tú,
is
cuando tú
taking
quieras
over
o
from her,
venderlo.
but it works a little
Oh, Dios mío,
differently.
gracias a Dios.
Kirak has assumed the position of commander, and he has important missions for you to carry out in the Atlas. You open these missions at your map device and can run them just like before. However, you won't encounter Kirak inside a map, and you won't be able to apply Kirak objectives to a map itself. Because of this, we have raised the chance that you receive a Kirak Atlas objective when you defeat a map boss. Previously, Zana's missions had completion objectives, but with the removal of the favor system, this stopped mattering. Instead of focusing on completion, Kirak missions now focus more on rewards, and so their purpose is to provide you with additional
Ahora
league
Kirak te
content
da las
or
misiones de
extra
Zana de
item
antes,
drops.
pero funcionan distinto.
Instead of your free daily mission being based on the last map you've completed, it's now based on the highest tier map you've completed in this current league. For example, if you completed a tier 16 map, your daily missions will always be high tier maps. Kirak missions
Esto
can
es muy
now
bueno.
include additional content like Conquerors, Ritual Encounters, Expedition Encounters, and even Monstrous Treasure, the former prophecy that makes an area contain 24 to 36 additional strongboxes with no natural monster
Oh
inhabitants.
my god, what?
Kirak now sells you maps, much like Zana did in the past, except there is now a wider variety of outcomes with variance on the prices, so you should probably go and check what he's selling more frequently in case there's a good deal. The items in the window are re-rolled under the same
Ok,
conditions as
Tuyen
Zana's previous
es básicamente Kirak
shop.
in
Kirak can sell
disguise.
maps that come with implicit
Porque dice
mods
que los
enabling
precios de los
various
mapas
content.
cambian.
For example, a map that always has a Legion encounter, or maps that have varying degrees of deliriousness on them.
También se pueden meter mapas rotos que tienen que si Legion o cosas de Delirium o cosas así.
Communication about important missions from other people who scouted the
Fuck,
Atlas
dude,
and
this
didn't
is
survive.
too much.
These items can be used like a currency item to re-roll the set of mission maps that Kirik is offering you.
It's way too much.
These new maps have a different set of mission outcomes that includes valuable ones like guaranteeing a unique map, having all maps be corrupted, always including a Shaper Guardian, Elder Guardian, or Conqueror, having only uncompleted maps available, or adding a Breachstone to the selection.
Puedes cambiar las misiones de Kirak. Kirak te da misiones así como sana, pero las misiones son mucho mejores que antes. Y puedes rerolearlas. Si no te gustan las misiones, puedes rerolearlas.
You can specialize into finding more Atlas scouting reports or unlocking new types that can drop.
Dios mío, tengo que ver ese Atlas ya.
Surveyor's Compass used to itemize sextant mods, as well as everything else Zana previously sold, like specific divination cards. Despite them not being part of the core Atlas experience anymore, it's still possible to fight Cirrus and the Conquerors to take advantage of their influence and unique item rewards.
Todavía puedes pelear con Cirrus.
Tier 14 or higher map bosses now have a chance to drop maps influenced by the Shaper, the Elder, or a random Conqueror. You can also purchase these maps from Kirik. When you enter the map, you'll be met with hordes of influenced monsters that can drop influenced items. Upon defeating the map boss, a portal will open to the Conqueror's arena.
Igual que antes.
The Conqueror will drop a fragment. Each
Conqueror va a tirar un fragmento.
Combine all 4 fragments in your map device to open a set of portals to the Cirrus encounter.
Puedes pelear con Cirrus con fragmentos. Okay.
As it's now harder to get influenced items, we've moved level gem modifiers into the global mod pool for amulets.
Eso está bien.
So it's now possible to get the powerful +2 levels to certain gems without having to use influenced amulets. Okay. Now that Cirrus and the Conquerors are no longer core parts of Atlas gameplay, they will not drop awakened gems.
Ya no van a tirar
These gems
Awakener
can now
gems.
drop from Maven invitations.
Ahora las gemas Awakener van a caer de las invitaciones de
Archnemesis is a
Maven.
challenge league that reinvigorates fights with rare monsters.
Oh.
It introduces around 60 new monster mods and allows you to customize your rare boss fights to control your level of risk and reward. These mods can be combined in over 35 recipes to create new, more powerful and rewarding mods. As you play through the league, you'll discover more recipes and learn how to best utilize them to get the most valuable rewards. When you slay regular rare and magic monsters in the Archnemesis League, they sometimes drop an itemized version of a new Archnemesis monster modifier. You store these in a dedicated inventory panel so they don't clutter your regular inventory.
Oh, se lotean solas.
Over the course of each area you play, you'll encounter 4 monsters that are frozen in place, petrified, and bound to an Archnemesis statue. When you find such a monster, you can free it by empowering it with an Archnemesis mod. If you're able to successfully defeat the empowered monster, then you will receive the fixed reward that corresponds to that modifier. The trick that makes this league awesome is the 4 petrified monsters per area.
O sea, igual que antes.
The mods you apply will accumulate as you play
Unas
through the
botas podridas y un raro que nadie quiere.
Monster, it also has the mod you applied to the first monster. This results in a fight that has twice as many dangerous mods and twice as many rewards. Even though you receive the reward from the first mod when you killed the first petrified monster, you receive a second reward of that type when you kill the second petrified monster.
Hay varios de estos y puedes bufearlo. Ya entiendo, o sea, cada monstruo que matas tiene todas las cosas anteriores. O sea que el último es el bueno. Vamos a ver. Vamos a ver el loot. Show me. Show me. Good loot, please. No me vas a mostrar el loot, ¿verdad, hijo de... No me lo mostró, qué infeliz.
Created by combining other mods together on the same monster. As an example of how this works, if you apply both Incendiary and Hasted to the same monster, then in addition to the rewards that these 2 mods grant, you will also receive an itemized Flamewalker mod upon killing the monster.
Flamewalker.
This can then be applied to another petrified monster later on to complete further recipes. These recipe mods yield substantially more dangerous encounters and have more valuable rewards. Even if you're not completing a recipe with your modifiers, you can still combine them to get some ridiculous combinations of rewards. For example, defeating an Innocence Touched enemy grants 3 currency rewards and converts all other rewards into currency. Defeating a Mirror Image enemy grants a Divination card reward and rerolls all rewards 3 times, yielding the rarest result. Killing a Flamewalker enemy grants 3 weapon rewards. Killing a Toxic enemy grants a generic reward plus a gem reward. If you were to kill an enemy with all 4 modifiers, you get a total of 9 currency rewards, each rolled 3 times and dropping the best result. But if you apply the mods in the order mentioned above, then as you kill each of the 4 monsters in the area, you'll receive the earlier rewards multiple times. The end result is the equivalent of getting 60 currency rewards and receiving the best 20 plus 3 regular currency rewards. As you can see from this example, even the basic rewards that offer, say, 3 random weapons are really useful because you can combine them with reward conversion mods to take advantage of their high item counts. We're looking forward to seeing what other types of crazy ways you manage to combine your Archnemesis rewards. To prevent you having to backtrack, there are more than 4 possible locations where you may encounter monsters in each area, but only the first 4 you encounter can be empowered.
No, esto es completamente nuevo.
Archnemesis mods cannot be traded with other players. Your progress is your own.
Metamorph.
We designed this league to be a relatively simple one to go alongside all of the new Atlas content in this expansion, and it exceeded our expectations. The fights are fun, the rewards are punchy, and there are a lot of tough decisions about which reward combinations or recipes you can pursue.
Que dice las peleas son difíciles, vamos a ver si es verdad.
Our goal is to take 2 very common gameplay archetypes that struggle with endgame content and to buff them so that they're in a much better place
habrá que ver qué tantas combinaciones locas podemos hacer, pero
targeting are hit damage bow characters and hand-casting spellcasters. If you haven't checked out the balance manifesto about these changes that we posted recently, I'd encourage you to read all about them in the patch notes that will be posted when the livestream ends. To be clear, this expansion does have a few of the usual nerfs to the most overperforming builds, but for the most part, the majority of balance changes are buffs. The goal is
hay un par de nerfs para los builds que estaban yendo demasiado bien en la liga pasada, pero que la mayoría son buffs.
We're introducing 2 new types of stash tabs,
nuevas stash
one
tabs,
for flasks and one for gems.
Uno para flash y uno para gems.
Is that you're able to set your regular tabs to have affinity for flasks or gems,
tenemos afinidad
para you've purchased the new specialized tabs.
Para gemas y para
the
flasks.
Stash tab allows you to easily store and sort your collection of up to 500 skill and support gems. By default, it displays all gems stored in the tab, but you can use one of the 4 categories at the top to filter between red, green, blue, and white gems. There's a drop-down that allows you to pick your preferred sorting method, such as current gem level, required level, or quality, to easily find whatever gem you're looking for.
Pero bueno, lo puedes poner con afinidad.
The Flask Stash tab allows you to store 500 flasks, and can be filtered to show life, mana, hybrid, utility, and unique flasks. You can also use the drop-down to change the sort order between item level, base type, and quality. This allows you to quickly find flasks of a certain type, potential flasks to vendor for glassblowers baubles, or high item level flasks for crafting. Remember that regardless of whether you've purchased these new tabs, you'll still be able to set up affinities for gems or flasks on your existing stash tabs. Alongside the launch of Siege of the Atlas, we are hosting a competitive event where players will race to be the first to kill a trio of bosses: the Maven, the Searing Exarch, and the Eater of Worlds. The event will take place in the hardcore solo self-found Archnemesis League. We have some interesting prizes in store for the winners. Keep an eye on the news next week for more details about how this event will work and what its prizes are. We're almost at the Q&A, but first I'd like to show you the new supporter packs we're releasing today to help fund development of future Path of Exile expansions.
What?
Our new packs are called the Worm and Emberkeep supporter packs.
Ok, tenemos Davion Knight a la derecha y son bullshit a la izquierda. Esto parece algo...
many exclusive cosmetic microtransactions like apparition effects, armor sets, weapon skins, forum badges,
el de la izquierda se ve bastante como Dark Souls y el de la derecha se ve bien chingón.
The Worm series comes with an exclusive pet, and the Emberkeep series comes with an exclusive weapon effect. These new packs are in addition to the 2022 core packs that we released recently. Remember to check those out if you haven't already. That concludes the reveal portion of this live stream. Keep an eye on our news
Papi
next week
necesita
as we unveil
paquete.
more details about the Siege of the Atlas
Papi Crocs necesita ese supporter pack, nuevamente de subs.
These reveals are already live on YouTube for you to link to your friends in case they missed the live
¿Alguien quiere patrocinarme? ¿Alguien quiere patrocinarme un supporter pack?
Alongside you next week. It's now time for the Q&A. If you have any questions about what we've shown you today, please get them ready because I'm about to be joined by Ziggy D as we answer your questions from Twitch chat. And after that, we'll be posting the full Path of Exile Siege of the Atlas patch notes.
Ok. Ya va a comenzar el Q&A. Ok. No se puede leer nada acá. Sí, vamos a quedarnos aquí. Ok, oh, fuck, hay demasiado que descargar aquí con esto. Vamos a pensar que, oh my god, lo del Atlas pasivo... Oh no, ok, veamos un momento. Al menos una influencia nueva. Yep, la tenemos. Currency nueva que no estaba en el teaser, la tenemos. Ultimatum is back, fuck. Nuevo Chase Iron, muchos. Fear 2.0, no nos dijeron esto, pero yo creo que sí hay, ¿no? San es malo culpable, tampoco nos lo dijeron, pero en el lore yo creo que tenemos razón. Rework a las gemas nuevas tampoco nos los han dicho todavía. Hard mode nada. Teaser o algo de Puedes 2. Fuck. La que es como celestial es más o menos, ¿no? Es más o menos. Nuevas bases, no hay nuevas bases tampoco. Liga Geométrico, se salvaron. Atlas Ascendancy Rework. Dude, super. Rework a las influencias. Not really, ¿verdad? Ritual 3.0. Si hubiese dicho Metamorph. O sea, esto es literalmente Metamorph de nuevo. Hard mode no lo pusieron. Es verdad, es verdad. Hay un boss. Mira, vamos a marcar este que hay un boss. Hay un boss ahí más o menos, ¿eh? ¿Sale el hot top? ¿Se imaginan? Bro, si llega a salir en la hot top. Si llega a salir en la hot top, dude, Chris va a tener mi respeto y va a perder mi respeto a la vez forever. Mi respeto porque cumple sus promesas y va a perder mi respeto por estar en una hot top. Imagínate hacer la pregunta y respuesta y Chris Wilson haciendo, no sé, burbujitas o algo así. Que es una hot tub, una bañera. Y esto viene del meme. Bueno, que no es tan meme porque dijeron que lo iban a hacer. Que no lo tengo aquí ahorita, pero ellos dijeron hace como 6 ligas en futuras cosas para Pados Excel pusieron revelar la 3.17 en una hot tub. Mira, Josecita puso solo emotes. Qué malo, Josecita. Hay casi 1000 personas acá. ¡No! Hay 900. No, eso tiene que ser un bug. No, yo ahora está bugueado mi OBS. Hola, me llamo Crox. Por eso no me digan cuántos hay, yo nunca veo por eso.
Good morning from New Zealand and Australia, Exiles. I'm Ziggy D here, joined by Chris Wilson. Once again, good morning, Chris.
Hey, how are things going?
Very good, very good. You guys always make our day on
No hay hot tub.
We work very hard to do that, yeah.
A pretty spicy
me pusieron nervioso, nunca me digan. No sé cuántos había, yo no veo eso.
First, before we get into the rest of the Q&A, and that is, were those training dummies the militia using real? Or is it just
los training dummies.
We're getting training dummies?
Es verdad.
Sometimes to fish you need elaborate bait, so I think that's a good analogy there.
I think that might be a no, Chad.
Dijeron que probablemente no haya. Training dummies. Ok, voy a tratar de concentrarme, gente.
I'll keep holding my breath for that one.
Voy a tratar de decirles todo lo que vayan hablando.
Post your questions in the chat for our helpful mods to grab. During this, as always, I have some questions pre-prepared based on my earlier watching of the announcements. You slipped some new stuff in there as well, like such as patch notes coming right after.
Patch notes viene?
Well. So you guys are ready. You guys are ready.
Yeah. It really helps having to write up a lot of the patch notes for the balance manifesto in advance. That means there's a lot.
Vienen las patch notes. Vienen las patch notes.
It's doable.
Sí,
so
señor.
Early manifesto also means early patch notes. I thought early manifesto meant lots of early nerfs, but only a couple this time around.
It also means early development, which is great as well.
Muy bien.
That is very good.
Tenemos patch notes, gente.
Right, well, we'll kick things off with the new Pinnacle content and Atlas of World changes. That is the big focus of this expansion.
Okay, primero de todo vamos a hablar del Pinnacle content.
And I have to say the design of the new Eldritch bosses looks awesome, very creepy.
El diseño de los nuevos bosses se ve bastante creepy.
Searing
¿Les gusta?
Eater of Worlds being placed. Where are they being placed in challenge level related to the Maven? Are they above her? Or
¿Qué tan
below her?
difíciles son en comparación a Maven?
Slightly more challenging. We do
Son
want to keep
más
pushing the boundaries there.
challenging.
It's not massively,
Son más
massively
difíciles.
slow, but a key thing here is that you can roll the some mods on the keys that give you access to them once you've killed them for the first time. So after like the quest completion of it, you then get the ability to farm them, and that involves itemized versions.
Dice que son más difíciles que
and
Maven,
because you can roll mods, of course,
pero
it lets
puedes
you punch up the challenge and reward
rolear mods
higher
ahí
than
después que
you
los matas
would
por primera
otherwise
vez.
be able to do in any other fight. So it should be very interesting to see how that goes.
That's interesting. How does the rewards scale with changing that?
¿Cómo escalan las recompensas cuando las vas cambiando, las vas alterando?
Can increase the rewards in traditional ways with regard to increasing quantity of drops, but I'll just double check to see if there's any other special stuff. So I'm going to do the dev check emoji.
Oh, that's a record for dev check, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right off the bat.
So basically, Quant will scale all of their special drops as well. So whatever they're getting in terms of, uniques and currency that you want, you just scale it as hard as you can.
Ah, that's good, because it doesn't always scale those like special.
Ok, dice que también van a escalar los únicos. Por lo tanto, tú puedes sacar más de un único ahí.
Item that mentions that quantity affects it, which helps in this case. It will hopefully make it clear.
I remember that Maven was initially pitched at being
por cierto, gente, tengo gente que se está suscribiendo y les agradezco enormemente. Tengo pausadas las alertas para que no interfiera con esto, pero después les voy a agradecer a todos cuando terminemos acá. Mil gracias por todo el apoyo. Después les voy a agradecer a todos individualmente, ¿vale?
Scaling it at all, like completely default settings, it's probably easier than the fixed Maven difficulty, but the average way that players are going to experience it with a comfortable level of juicedness is probably a bit punchier.
Dice que
that's good then. That gives a bit of range.
Normal sin meterle nada va a ser más difícil que Maven.
Yeah, you get them on the way through the quest progression and also on the way to doing the farm cycle. So they're easier, of course. They still drop good in-game stuff, but just not quite as good as the absolute pinnacle ones do.
Dice que son más fáciles que los jefes, los mini jefes son más fáciles y dropean buenas cosas, pero no es como los otros.
No, we'll have to say. I honestly can't remember if there's a memory game.
Dice que no sabe si hay un juego de memoria, así como Maven. Es que no recuerda.
The Atlas has undergone like a ton of iterations now at this point, adding more complexity in some areas and depth, whereas it's been slimming things down in other areas. What have you guys learned from previous iterations of the Atlas so far, and how has this shaped the new generation that we're getting now?
This is kind of a
todas las iteraciones de Atlas que les he enseñado con todo lo que han hecho hasta ahora.
But you also don't want to lose any depth. And so, to some extent, like what we did with Path of Exile 2's skill gem system, is we've tried to make this more approachable, right? Like when you look at the Atlas now, it's simple. There are just a bunch of maps. You work from bottom to top, on fighting harder maps, and you don't have to worry about regions. You don't have to worry about repeating work or chasing conquerors.
Dijeron que uno de los enfoques de esto es que quieren hacerlo más simple que W para no tienes que preocuparte por regiones ni nada de eso. Solamente vas haciéndolos todos y ya está. Pero tampoco querían perder nada de profundidad. Así que por eso añadieron el árbol de pasivos.
And the decisions they're making. So it actually plays really well, and you can interact with the passive tree at so much earlier. In fact, so much of the rewards of the Atlas now are pushed really early in terms of you getting Eldritch implicits and getting to fight bosses and getting, good.
Dice que también lo bueno es que como tú vas a hacer un montón de mapas al principio, vas a poder hacer eso mucho más rápido. O sea, la mayor parte de lo que vas a de tu Atlas se va a llenar rápidamente. Y eso se va a sentir muy bien. Y no tienes que hacer como que lo último, los jefes y nada de esto, como tienes que hacer con Maven antes.
It's the slimming down of the core progression system. So now you just kind of run maps from 1 to 16 as the core progression, right? Like you don't have to do any complicated steps of moving watchstones and chasing influence and all that sort of stuff to do the core progression. So that's much simplified now.
Yes.
There's not like any secret hoops there or anything you have to jump through, right?
Right, it's very simple. And the other thing is, there's now 3 Atlas quest progressions that you can progress at your own pace. You've got
dice que es mucho más sencillo porque ahora cada vez que pones una Watchstone simplemente suben el nivel de los mapas hasta llegar a tier 16. O sea, no hay nada raro ni nada que aprender ahí. Simplemente más Watchstones, más tier de mapa.
So that's a good question then. Kind of where is Maven's position now in this whole progression system? Because before you had to constantly be witnessing
formas de progresar. Maven y los dos nuevos jefes. Y los puedes progresar a tu ritmo. Ninguno tiene que ver con el otro como tal.
Like I imagine 100 of those come from those, and then the remaining 17 from boss fights and Maven and whatnot. So where does she kind of sit now?
¿Y cuál es la posición de Maven? Esa pregunta de Siggy.
So 117 come from completing maps, and then there's an additional 15 bonus points. So 11 are from the Maven encounters. So that's her primary purpose there, is giving you a bunch of points. And 5 of them are from the standard invitations. 6 of them are from the invitations that were previously called the Uncharted Realms encounters. There's also 4 more points that you get from the new siege bosses. So the 4 guys, the Searing Exarch, the Eater of Worlds, the Black Star, and the Infinite Hunger, all have a point each upon the time that you kill them the first time.
Ok.
And
Maven te va a dar
Maven
11
also has a more
puntos con
defined
cada
role
una de
in
sus
terms of
invitaciones.
weaponizations. She's now the source for awakened gems, which of course are as powerful as they always have. Yeah, that's a complete lie. They're less powerful than they always have been, but as powerful as they were last league. Getting carried away with the marketing there. She also drops the Orb of Conflict, which of course is really important for the
Dice que también Maven, o sea, la razón por la que vamos a hacer Maven ahora es porque te va a dropear las gemas. Las Awakened Gems, que es lo que te tiraba antes Cyrus y los Conqueror.
She's like some weird neutral third party then. She drops the Orb of Conflict. She's kind of like overseeing the conflict between the others.
Yeah. Well, that's her thing, is she wants to witness conflict. You know,
it makes sense. Yeah, and we kicked her in the shins a bunch of times, and now her family showed up to wreck us. So that's awesome.
Ok, y sé que bueno, entonces ella es como un tercero en todo este conflicto. Ella realmente no le importa quién gane o quién pierda. Y Chris dice, claro, o sea, toda su cosa es observar el conflicto. Es lo que ha hecho desde que la conocemos y lo va a seguir haciendo.
Get some of those passives early, or some of those awakened gems.
Veo que muchas personas están cayendo ya las alitas.
It's good for you to get passives as fast as you can, because
ya me cayeron también.
Faster for you to play through content, implicitly it increases the rate you're getting rewards and so on. So I suspect players will choose to do it as soon as they're capable of doing it. Of course, as we know, those fights aren't super easy, so people will find the right place for it.
How do we respec the Atlas passive now with so
¿Se
many
pueden cambiar los pasivos del Atlas? Del Atlas de...
Yeah, it's been moved to the core drop pool, basically. So you find orbs when making it a better pace. And yeah, I mean, like all things in Path of Exile, you can fix your mistakes. It's just a pain to do so on a large scale. So we're not expecting people to change their Atlas loadout between maps. But, they'll find something that works well for them. And the nice thing, of course, now is it applies to every map on the Atlas. So you don't have to, ignore, 3/4 of them because they don't have some specific thing you've specialized in.
I'm going to ruin chat, by the way, and just say, I just got my drop, thanks.
Ok, dice que se va el drop que te permite hacer eso, está en el core drop y te va a estar cayendo constantemente. Dice que como todo en Path of Exile es un pequeño dolor cambiarlo y es un gran dolor si lo cambias a gran escala. Entonces piensa bien lo que vas a hacer, pero no es imposible recuperarte de tus errores.
My understanding is that all of the stuff, providing you're at the right quest state, all of the quest stuff will unlock for everyone in the party. And of course, if you're in a map when it gets completed, and you'd normally get a bonus completion for that, then you do get the completion here. So yeah, I'm unaware of any issues playing through in co-op, and that's something we're trying to be
Si vas a jugar en equipo, o sea, en party, si completas un mapa, le cuenta a todos, así como funcionaba antes.
That even applies to Archnemesis and so on. We're trying to not repeat mistakes from the past where some leagues don't work in co-op.
Y sé que Archnemesis también funciona en party.
Implementation of stuff, which is good because I've been co-oping every league start now, so it's good to see that. Do you imagine that even boss fights and stuff will unlock co-op progression? Because I know some of that stuff has been turned off a little bit in the past because it was potentially abusable.
Yeah, we have to stop the abuse cases because we don't want a system where, at the moment, if you want to play Path of Exile alone or with friends who aren't in your instance, just chatting to them while you're playing, this works. You can have a great experience. There's no reason why you absolutely have to bring friends to Path of Exile. Of course, it's good for social reasons, but games that allow abuse get to this situation where you're either kind of forcing yourself to only play when your friends
dice
are playing,
que lo único que están buscando es que no haya casos de abuso. O sea, que tú puedes jugar solo si quieres, pero también puedes jugar en party si quieres. Y la idea es que ambos tipos de playstyle sean similares. Porque si hay uno que es mejor que el otro, entonces te vas a ver forzado que si quieres hacer uno de los dos, te vas a ver forzado en hacer cuál es el mejor, porque simplemente es mejor.
We're not going to give any more info on that. Players can hopefully work it out over time. That's why you play the game, right? To find things out. So all will be revealed in the future.
More seriously, though, a lot of people like Sana. Is there some potential that...
No voy a decir nada de Sana, que si quieres saber por qué Sana hizo lo que hizo, tienes que jugar el juego.
Play a bit coy on that one, we'll see. I mean, we're not just going to forget about it.
That's a definite yes, chat. I mean she's a great little plot thing that can be thrown in.
Okay, y definitivamente Sana no es lo último que vamos a saber de Sana.
Right.
Sana va a hacer algo más.
All right, we have a couple of viewers from chats. Joe Bobs asks, are Atlas passive allocations per character or account?
These are per account, I believe. So it's we call this per league account, basically. So on your account, you have a separate allocation for hardcore versus the
los
main
puntos
standard
del
league
Atlas de del Atlas van a ser por cuenta completo. Si tienes varios personajes, todos tienen el mismo Atlas de pasivas. Así que,
this is a good one for the dev check, guys.
2 dev checks.
It's Awakener level 8.
Okay, wow, yep. That's kind of what happened with the recent change as well, right? Like it shifted upwards like that.
May as well have it be hard.
Yeah, may as well.
Sirus va a ser Awakener level 8 siempre. Sí, Awakener level 8.
Yeah, the conqueror stuff is pretty optional.
That's a good follow-up then. Not Lime this asks, can we witness conquerors? In all caps, by the way. They're excited about this.
Caps, can we witness conquerors? Yeah, you can.
Oh, maybe puede ver a los Conquerors. Maybe puede presenciar a los Conquerors. O sea que, maybe, tenemos un Fear 3.0.
Okay. What happens to the unique Watchstones? Nobus asks.
¿Qué le pasaron a las Watchstones únicas?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we just eradicated.
Adiós las Watchstones únicas. Adiós.
All Watchstones are gone.
Todas las Watchstones by.
That strips a couple of things from Cyrus as well. Is there any like buff to his loot drops or anything to compensate, or just?
Cyrus still has good stuff, right?
He does, sure.
Yeah, they're nodding like, of course he has good stuff.
Ok, Cyrus ya no va a dropear Watchstones únicas, por lo tanto, está preguntando si van a bufear su loot y que les dice, él tiene todavía cosas cool, ¿verdad? Sí, todavía tiene cosas cool.
The thing about currency is that it's tradable. And tradable means that if you do not know how to use it, or you don't have a good opportunity to use it, you're able to trade it to someone else who does better. And so you can get these Eldritch orbs and essentially just say, I give up, someone else make my items for me, and trade them and get a direct item that you want. You hand someone a pile of this currency, they hand you a finished item, essentially.
Dice que que algo que es tradiable es algo que tú no tienes oportunidad de usar, o algo que puedes aprovechar por currency, ¿no? Y entonces dice, bueno, si simplemente te rindes y no puedes hacer tus ítems tú mismo, se los puedes dar a otra persona.
And it also means if you've got some of one, but you actually want Searing Exarch ones, you can trade them with the other person.
No me vas a cambiar, Chris. No vas a jugar Swords of Found.
We'll transition now into that whole Eldritch crafting topic. But it seems like we're getting a little bit of Harvest-esque stuff here, some Harvest-inspired things in these Eldritch currencies, particularly with the Chaos Orb, rerolling prefixes or suffixes, annulling prefixes or suffixes, exaltics prefixes.
Si no le salen las alas, sin exclamación drop, ahí tiene un segundo link para que se las cuente rápido, ¿eh?
Guys excited to move in that direction a little bit with this?
This is a safe way of us doing it. It lets us have these powerful orbs. I mean, I should emphasize they're not easy to get, right? Like, you know, we're talking like special exalts here that are obviously going to be rarer than regular exalts. And so it's a way that we're pretty comfortable because it does require some manipulation of what you're doing with the tiers of the implicit mods. And, you know,
es que las nuevas orbes son más raras que las otras. O sea que la nueva Exalted es más rara que la Exalted normal.
And it's actually quite a lot of fun to craft items this way.
Yeah, I get it. You kind of limit tested with Harvest. My dream is to like have later you guys add a little step where you can like infuse these orbs with specific target, you know, modifier like fire or something like that by killing a specific high level boss or something like that. But anyway, I'm just excited. Anyways, a couple questions.
Cada vez que nombran Harvest, queréis como que pronuncie un poquito el ceño. Sí que está diciendo que, o sea, ¿cuál es el límite de las orbes y todo esto? Dice que es bastante simple.
As long as you're okay to replace the implicit that's on something, which is what you just hinted at, then it's generally strictly better. You know, I mean, there might be border cases where having a mod on an item is bad for your build because you really don't want to set things on fire or whatever it is, but other than that...
Okay, dice que las orbes son el 90% de las veces algo positivo. Porque siempre va a agregarte algo el ítem. Entonces, rara vez va a ser algo negativo para tu build.
Thing where you have to like craft a finished item and then have a one-shot go at getting the implicits like corruption. Nor did we want something where if you find a perfect item on the ground, you're screwed to get the implicits that you want. And so if you find an amazing rare item, you, through whatever means, you're able to then make it have amazing implicits on it. And you also won't feel bad putting a lesser implicit. Like if you just get an orb and put an implicit on it, it makes the item better and you can totally replace that and upgrade it later. There's no problem as you're playing through maps randomly adding implicits to your items because
Dice
eventually
esta
you can
que
still get the same
lo
item
bueno de
into the
estas
right
orbes
place
es que
later on.
vas a tener varias versiones de ellas.
Random
Entonces, tú no te vas a
clarification,
sentir
when
mal
you
por
use one
tirarle
of the
una
orbs to
pequeña
increase
orbe
the
a un
tier
ítem
of the affix,
y que sea,
if I'm
sabes,
understanding
ligeramente
correctly,
mejor.
the
Porque eso lo puedes cambiar en
does
el
it change
futuro.
what implicit that is, or does it just increase its tier?
Yeah, it does re-roll. So
Okay.
there are 4 currency items, and this is super complicated because the word tier, like tier 1 implies the best, right? But when I say higher tier, I'm referring to like tier 1 being the lowest. So we're just going to use clearer language. There are 6 ranks of each mod, 1 through 6.
Okay.
The first one, the lowest one, comes from the lowest currency item. That drops in all maps. And then the second 2 will drop from influenced monsters and influenced maps.
Ok, básicamente dice de que si tú le pones un implícito bueno a un ítem y tú quieres subirlo de tier, o sea, que si es un tier 5, tier 6 y quieres subirlo para que sea un tier 4, 3, 2 o 1, que es el mejor, no lo puedes hacer como que sube de tier con esta orbe. No, la orbe que lo va a subir de tier va a re-rolearlo. O sea, te va a cambiar también los implícitos.
But there's no downside to that. It's not corrupting your item. Aside from the wealth investment that you're making in the item and the ease of trading or finding them, it's entirely just a matter of sinking wealth into the item to get exactly what you're wanting. And in return, of course, they're blindingly powerful. But then once you have the mods that you're wanting, the Orb of Conflict will upgrade and lower them. Sure, you may get a lowering that you don't want, and that wastes some time or resources, but that mod is then fixed in place as that type that's being upgraded or lowered. So,
ok, y dice que la cosa es que tienes la orbe de conflicto, que es la que te va a tirar Maven, que lo que va a hacer es que te va a subir el tier de uno de los modificadores de tus implícitos y te va a bajar el tier del otro. Entonces de esa forma es que una vez que ya tienes los dos modificadores que quieres, usas la orbe de conflicto tantas veces como te sea necesario para tenerlo en el tier máximo al que realmente te importa y un poquito más bajo el que no te importa mucho.
A rank 4 version though, but applying the rank 4 thing is potentially going to take a bunch of them to get the same mod because, you know, the pool's got a bunch of diversity in there.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you could use an Orb of Conflict for this because you've got basically got a 50% chance that you get rank 4 out of it, and so people are going to have to make some decisions. And that's what games are.
Pero claro, o sea, digamos si tienes un ítem con un implícito que tú quieres, ¿verdad? Tú puedes usar la Orb of Conflict para subir ese tier y tú vas a tener que jugártela de ¿qué es mejor? ¿Gastar una Orb of Conflict o usar el siguiente tier de Exalted Influence Orbs nuevas?
I mean, this may gradually expand in the future, but for the time being, this is what we're comfortable with, and honestly, it's quite a lot of power, so...
Es una buena pregunta, ¿qué va a pasar con las corrupciones?
Be enough for now.
Well, that's a +1 to the chase for rare items in these slots, and on the comparison table between a rare and unique for each slot. Has to be considered now, especially since they are like effectively low risk to add some power to an item. So that's rather interesting.
That's ideally what you want, is that uniques are kind of guaranteed power, and then rares have the potential to be better, and this helps achieve that.
So the implicits aren't going to have item level requirements.
Esa es una muy buena pregunta.
Using them on a low level item affect their like required level? Can these be used for
spameen eso, please.
If you were to put one on a low level item, it punches the required level
a ver si nos responde.
That's in maps, because these are like, you know, flat fire damage to all spells and that kind of thing, right?
Okay.
You know, it would clear the campaign pretty efficiently otherwise. But what we meant by this is it can be applied to any eye level of item, right? Yeah. So you could technically apply it to a low level item if you chose to. You just wouldn't be able to use it unless you're on your high character.
Yeah, you find like a really good pair of boots at level 50 or something. You can
and this is like 68 plus or whatever. It's not like, you know, insanity high.
Yeah, okay. So that makes sense.
¿Y qué pasaría con las Orb of Chance?
68 required. Got it. Ben the Muffin Man asks, can you get a third implicit by corrupting the item that has 2 Eldritch implicits already?
My understanding is that corrupting the item will remove the existing implicits and put the random corrupted one on. That's correct, right, guys?
Adiós corrupciones, entonces.
Yep. So yes, if you want to corrupt an item to get a corrupted implicit, you'll lose all your hard work on the Eldritch implicits. But as you mentioned, Eldritch implicits cannot be placed on uniques, and so corruption still has a very valid place there.
Got it. Okay.
Entonces la corrupción quita los implícitos, pero la corrupción la puedes seguir usando en los ítems únicos, ya que los ítems únicos no pueden ser afectados por los nuevos, las nuevas influencias. Eso es bastante sad.
You know what? Let's add some mods to the pool. And Archnemesis is the second time that we're working on improving rare monsters, and it's also a really cool sounding name. Like, there was no debate when we're having our brainstorming session for names, right? Someone said Archnemesis, and people kind of drifted out of the room and started typing it in their documents. And you know what I mean? Like, it just ended at that point. You know, we all knew that was the name.
It was just decided collaboratively.
It is not on the metal banned list, but that doesn't mean that it can't be.
It sounds like it could be.
We need people in the community to make metal bands called Archnemesis.
Pero Archnemesis no es un nombre de metal.
There probably is one out
Pareciera.
there for sure, right? There's got to be. It's a solid name. But I was like,
Well, hay canciones que se llaman así.
So, what are the Archnemesis monsters then? Because I see there's like a statue, and then there's a rare monster chained to the statue.
Mhm.
So the rare monster is the thing we're fighting, not the
That's right.
statue. The statue is
Yep.
the thing they're chained to. Okay.
When we spawn an area, we pick a bunch of rares, or adding rares to the area, of course, because we don't want to take your rares away. And we basically get some rare monsters from a disparate set of types where possible. So it's a variety of rares that can spawn in that area.
Ok, para empezar,
Chain them
en la
statues,
liga
and we
vamos a
spawn more than you need.
agregar
We want you
más
to be
monstruos
having the
raros.
ability to do 4, but we don't want a situation where the 4th one is hiding around some corner somewhere.
Van a
you
agregar
don't
más monstruos
explore.
raros. O sea
And so we
que
spawn, like,
no hay
I
que,
can't
no es
remember
que hay
the
menos
number, like
monstruos
6 of
raros
these or something like that.
en el
And I
mapa.
failed
Van a
the
haber
game
más.
again.
Gracias a la
And,
liga.
we spawn like 6 of them,
Parece
so
que
that
no
as you
hay
play through the area,
ultimátum,
you'll
papi.
probably encounter all 4 without having to backtrack.
Hay un grupo de metal que se llama
Only
así.
the
No estaba
first
loco,
4
yo pensé que
work,
había
but
uno.
basically empowering one of those monsters
O sea que
will let
está
you
dentro de la
fight that
lista.
rare, and of course it'll, like, you know, have quite a big fight associated with it. Some of those mods do some pretty crazy stuff.
That sounds like new tech, kind of the idea of like having a bunch of spawn points pre-plotted out and then only using the 4 that you come across first, right?
Yeah, the level team have been doing some good work over the last few years at adding the ability for us to do fun stuff like this. You know, inserting things into levels, having, like, you know, the ability to have, like, flow graphs of where players can move around the level, and we can predict where we'll be early in a level versus late in a level to spawn stuff. You know,
¿Ya dijeron
like
que Ultimatum
Delirium
estaría en la
mirrors and so
liga?
on.
Sí, lo
big
dijeron
because, like you
hace
said,
2
it's
ligas.
an
Supone que la liga
backtrack,
pasada iba a
which
estar,
will
pero no
make
les dio
that,
chance y dijeron que lo iban a
full
poner en esta, pero no
gameplay
escuché nada.
feel better.
Yeah.
It's great news.
But yes, to answer your question, the Archnemesis monster is the petrified rare that's attached to the statue.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like there's some secret with the statue, but I might be reading too much into this. It's just because Archnemesis means like the main nemesis, is my understanding of the definition.
Oh, parece que eso no es todo. Parece que la liga no es
Anyway,
nada
I'm
más
just-
matar a los monstruos raros adicionales. El Archnemesis es el monstruo que está en la estatua. Y parece que hay algo más ahí, pero Chris Wilson nada más hizo más nada.
Similar mechanics in the past. Well done. However, when you click them, do they automatically go straight to that menu since they aren't tradable anyway?
That's correct. They automatically go there. You don't need to go through the inventory. We should also talk about clicking here, because
Yes.
we have spent 13 weeks preparing for today, where players are going to say, but these don't auto pick up. Do you not learn? Like, they were sitting there scratching their head going, seriously, GGG, we've told you by now it's auto pick up or nothing, right? So we've been prepared for this.
A ver,
You
está
don't
hablando del
have to
autopick.
find very many of these per area. It is usually around 2, right? And I know in the past I've said that expedition stuff didn't auto pick up because you don't find many, and then when you could actually play it scales to like 16 in the crazy juice maps, and yes, that is too many. These mods don't scale. You're finding like 2, maybe 3, but I'm wanting this to be 2 ideally. And so yes, you'll have to probably click twice per area. The thing is, the inventory space, while large, is not completely unlimited, right? Like, there are cases
Ok,
where auto pick
están
up
hablando acerca del
would be
auto
annoying.
pickup y
And
todo
so
esto. Y
we've
dijeron que, mira,
actually
máximo tú
also
vas a estar agarrando casi
identified
3
the
o
fact that
4
we need
por
to do
área,
more
pero
inventory
generalmente van a
space,
ser
which
2
which is
por
present
área.
in the footage you've seen, where we've increased it to an 8x8 inventory, giving you plenty. In all of our internal testing until like literally 3 days ago, it was a 5x5 inventory, having this awesome constraint thing where players are like frustrated at having to choose what they're carrying around and make decisions, and we love decisions. But at the end of the day, we realized that would not be popular. And so we've significantly increased the space up to 64 slots, which should be plenty. And if you're lucky, you'll find there may even be footage of the 5x5 inventory floating around the internet, because the B-roll footage we gave to journalists earlier this week was still when it was 5x5. And so we had to refilm the entire Archnemesis section of the live stream at the last minute with a new 8x8 inventory so that people don't melt down about the limited amount of space there.
Ok, dijeron que inicialmente en el inventario adicional que te iban a dar para Archnemesis iba a ser 5 por 5. Y así tú ibas a tener que buscar qué orbes te vas a quedar y cuáles no. Y creo que eso dice que
manually
le encantan las
picking these up,
decisiones
given
y eso hubiese sido una
that you
decisión
don't
interesante de
necessarily
qué
want
cosas
all
iba a
of
agarrar y
them.
cosas
You
no.
might be a little bit
Pero
choosy with
dijeron
what
tal
you
vez eso no
do.
iba a ser muy
And it
popular,
really
así
is
que
like
decidieron
two per area
aumentarlo
that
a
you'll
8 por
find. And if
8.
it's something
A
where
los
you're well
periodistas le
into
dieron
deep, complicated recipes, 4 tiers deep,
imágenes
and then the most
que
common
son
thing ever
5 por
drops,
5. Y
you're
dice que si
probably
buscan en
not
el
going to
internet pueden que la
want
consigan. Nosotros
to
tuvimos que
pick that
cambiarlos a
one up.
último minuto
In addition,
justamente
correct
para
me if I'm wrong,
ustedes, porque
guys, we are
sabíamos que
supporting
le iba a
filtering
gustar
rules.
que fuese más grande.
Yeah, you can interact with them with loot filters, and that means that someone will quickly work out what the valuable ones are and make it so people understand whether they even need to make the 2 clicks or not. I'd recommend it during the campaign because you need the reagents to climb the higher recipes, and even the bad ones that give you like some, triple weapon reward or something that you don't necessarily value will be very important to bolster up the complicated recipes that rely on reward conversion later on. So it's not as
Dice que
obvious as
también
there being
funciona
good or
con los
bad mods,
filtros, así que
but there are
puedes
certainly cases where you've already got 7 of
decidir si
something
vale
you
la
don't
pena o
need
no
8.
hacer los 2 clics.
Okay. A couple follow-up questions. So you said you're aiming this at being like 2 clicks per zone, which is not too many clicks. But I noticed that you need to spend 4 of them per zone. How's the economy of that work out? Are you intended
you
to not
won't-
always
yeah.
juice them?
You're going to want to save up for recipes and have a plan. So if you have a completed recipe, you may as well use it when you find the statues in an area. Some of the recipes have up to 4 components. Some of the recipes have just 2. There are cases where you're not completing a recipe, but you're spending mods because you may as well, or you want to, or you've come up with some cool reward combination. But generally speaking, when you're playing through, you don't necessarily feel the need to want to juice out every single statue that you find. You're doing it often enough. Like every second area, you'll probably do a very complicated fight. And for some players, they'll spend their 2 in every area if they're doing simple recipes. But yeah, it's okay to find one where you don't have a mod in order to unlock the monster, because there will be plenty more later on.
Ok, dice que si vas a conseguir solamente 2 en cada uno, pero tienes que gastar 4 por área, eso, ¿cómo dan esos números? Y le dice, no tienes que ponerle las cosas para mejorarlo. Puedes usarlo si quieres, o si no, cada 2 áreas puedes tener una muy buena... una super pelea desafiante, pero no tienes que hacerlo siempre.
So you've got 2 angles here. They're non-tradable, and you've got to use them or lose them. So use the mechanic, right? Use the.
This isn't clear from the footage because we're still working on the UI for it, but they do have levels that affect the item you get out. You know, when you're getting like beasts and bestiary, and the item level of the output is related to the inputs and that kind of stuff, it's the same here. If you find one in the mudflats as you're playing through the campaign, and you think, I'm going to be smart and save that for maps because that's going to be a component to when I get really good uniques or something. No, it's locked at being relatively low level. So you want to be spending them throughout the campaign as you go. Now, we're doing a bunch of stuff to be permissive with levels there, so if you find something in Act 1 and you spend it in late Act 1 or early Act 2, it's still, impactful. Like, we're giving some level grace there, but at the same time, the intention isn't that you just pick up a bunch through the campaign, and when you hit maps, you got 64
Dice que las orbes que consigues para Archnemesis están bloqueadas por nivel. O sea, que si consigues una nivel bajo, te va a dar recompensas nivel bajo. Así que tienes que tener cuidado con eso porque no van a ser tan impactantes cuando llegues a mapas. No te vas a guardar una de nivel 1 y te la vas a llevar a mapas. Pero eso me da la idea. ¿Qué tal tabulas? Tabulas infinitas. No puedo hacer eso, simplemente conseguir un montón de orbes que te den nivel 1 uniques. Son easy tabulas. ¿No? Dijeron que hicieron eso para que digan que G no piensa en esto. Bro, no piensa en esto, es como la quinta liga que pasa exactamente lo mismo, que puedo agarrar algo nivel 1 y sacar tabulas. Pero en este punto está bien que haya muchas tabulas. Está bien, pero...
Because you're getting around 2 per area, a lot of fights are totally fine with 2. Like, that's what you're kind of wanting to do. So you may, playing the default way, get to have a fight in every area, but you'll also find situations where you want to build up to 4. There's also the thing where we don't just assume that players can handle a 4 fight, right? Like, that's quite tricky. You want to have a look at what type of monster it is. Maybe if you have a 4 fight that you want to do, it's better to put it on something small like a squid or something like that, rather than necessarily a big beast or whatever.
I think with all the 4 heads in chat, everyone can handle the 4 fight, but we'll see. Sorry. So some of the mods can be combined in recipes to produce more dangerous mods. Do you have a way of like discovering/tracking this recipe system?
¿Y el pelada no shop en Latam?
Look up POEDB.
Eso no lo van a responder, pero vamos a preguntarlo.
So we have a hinting system in the inventory where and this isn't shown in the footage, I should add, but this is in there now. If you have a complete recipe that you can just do, then there is a subtle shader effect on those things to say this is a component of a recipe. And once you put some in the window, then the remaining ones for that recipe have a shader effect on them. And the shader effect is more significant if the recipe is a larger, more important, valuable recipe. And so basically, as long as you just say, oh, I've got some stuff I can do, you'll work out what the recipes are. Like, that system there basically tells them to you without explicitly saying this plus this plus this in a UI somewhere. And so it'll be pretty obvious what recipes you can complete. The goal is not that these are like hidden rune words where where the community spends weeks
Preguntaron si piensan aumentar los tags de currency al meter más currency.
In the first day or two. It's going to be... Many people will be able to look at the wiki to get the list if they want, but you won't need to if you just have an okay memory and look at what the UI clues tell you.
In that case, how much impact on reward does the fuse modifiers have? It seems like it makes them potentially quite a lot harder.
Right, so a lot of the better rewards, the ones that do interesting conversion, come from the higher tier ones. So an example is Innocence Touched that was in the presentation, right? So that's the pinnacle of like up four or five tiers of reward combinations. It's hard to get to, that's the thing that you put together by maps and only get to do occasionally. And that does some really interesting reward conversion. So you could just get Innocence Touched and then fight it and get those rewards, but you'll realize that juicing Innocence Touched with 3 other mods, A, makes it really blindingly difficult, and B, gives you a giant pile of juiced rewards that are all like, exponentially combinatorial with the other mods that you've chosen.
Well, that does answer my next question as well, then, that you can potentially recipe together already recipe things going up tiers of modifiers.
Sí, o sea, puedes combinar, o sea, tú para conseguir las mejores cosas tienes que como de combinarlas. Por ejemplo, no me dijeron cuáles, pero a veces yo agarro la A y la B y esas se combinan y me dan una C cuando haga el encuentro. Por lo tanto, tú puedes después agarrar esas recompensas y seguir mejorándolas, así como hacían en Talisman, por ejemplo, para eventualmente tener una super OP, como la que le mostraron. La que mostraron era de convertir todas las otras recompensas en currency. Y esa es muy, muy buena. Pero no la quieres usar sola, quieres usarla en combinación con otras cosas.
I think this is significantly more rewarding.
That's fair. Yep. That's fair. We were doing a lot of work for just the talisman in that case.
Okay, dijeron que justamente con Talismán esto es mucho más recompensante que Talismán. Pero no hay que intentar mucho para que lo sea, ¿sabes? Talismán era 0. Más que 0 es cualquier cosa.
The items themselves look more elaborate if they're higher tier ones. It'll be pretty obvious from the properties of it, and when you're fighting it, you'll certainly know that's an impactful boss thing. And it basically just all scales up. Like, it'll be pretty obvious which ones are good.
Okay, that's good.
Ese están bastante explicados cuáles son buenos, así que va a ser como que obvio saber cuáles son buenos. Pero yo lo dudo. Yo creo que algunos van a tener que...
Like, the person who's controlling the area gets the core Archnemesis mod drops, and we're very careful to try to get this to be about 2 per area. The supplementary party members will also receive their own drops, and it has their own system of trying to force it so that they're not getting too many per area, but they're still getting some. So there's a system there where players are all receiving drops as they play through to accumulate their own mods. Now, in an area, any of the players can do a recipe, but it's locked so that once you've put mods in it, that player who put the mods in must be the person who puts the remaining mods in. This prevents a TFT-style backdoor complicated trade system that would completely change how the league plays intentionally.
Okay.
But it also means that the rewards go to the person who put the mods in, right? So if you and I are playing and we've accumulated a bunch of stuff, and in this area I want to complete my recipe, so I stick my mods in, you can't help me by putting any of yours in to complete
la primera cosa de recompensa tiene que poner todas las demás. Entonces, y el que va a recibirla también va a ser el que las pone. Entonces puedes jugar en party, pero solamente uno va a recibir las recompensas, pero solamente uno va a poner también el costo.
But in the next area, you could then do your recipe and you get the benefit of that one. So as we're playing through in a party, you just kind of alternate who's doing large recipes. And it works pretty well.
Get rolled, TFT.
Get rolled, TFT.
But if you're the map opener,
un pequeño delay, me parece.
In the first place, right?
Any player can start putting mods in. So if some guy brushes in and sticks a mod in ahead of you, then it's their instance in terms of putting mods in.
They've locked it in. That's unusual. That's very different to how it normally works.
This is basically through playtesting where we want to make sure that it's done in a way that's fair. And unfortunately, the problem is if you have a system where I can put in half, like I've collected half of the best recipe and you've collected the other half, right? If I can stick my half in, you can stick your half in, then the balance is incredibly skewed in terms of people converging on the best stuff too quickly. So we would have to nerf it to compensate, which we don't want to do. And it also creates a system where now the second you get half of the best recipe, you go to some Discord and start spamming to get the other half. And that's not really the game. Here you have a progression that you can control. You don't have to spend a lot of time out of game trying to find it. And because of that, we can make it punchy and rewarding. We don't have to harvest it down to be bland because of the fact that there's tradability there.
Well, this is fantastic from the party play perspective because
tienes que usarla tú mismo y tú tienes que completar todos tus recipes tú mismo. La razón por la que lo haces así es porque si no lo completas tú mismo, ellos lo que van a hacer es que yo tengo la mitad del recipe, otra persona tiene la mitad del recipe, entonces para conseguir esa otra persona tengo que ir a Discord a spamear hasta que consigan la otra mitad. Y dice que son los que quieren el juego y va a tener que balancear alrededor de eso y tampoco lo quieren. Entonces de esta manera vas a tener más recompensas. Sí podemos sacar eso del medio. Por lo tanto, no se puede tradear. Yo estoy de acuerdo con eso.
There's always another map, but yes, like all things in life, proper communication with your partner is very important.
Okay.
Communicate, collaborate. All right. Can you search the Archnemesis inventory? Is there a search bar? I can see that being a requested feature if there isn't.
Like, as in you type in part of the name and it finds it. It's a reasonable suggestion. It hasn't come up. Like, you know, it wasn't a big issue because I think that by the time because you can control where they go, you take your good ones and you put them in the corner, and you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So you kind of do understand where your stuff is, but I don't see any harm in adding the search bar, right? Like, we're not philosophically opposed. It may already be done. In fact, there may be someone watching this going, I should do that. But, you know,
so some UX designers like, he doesn't see the harm in it.
Or they're thinking, it's been in for 4 weeks. What is this guy doing?
Okay,
dice que van a agregar una barra de búsqueda para la cosa de Archnemesis y de esa forma si alguien necesita va a estar ahí.
We don't think so.
Por eso que sinceramente no siente que sea importante.
Made more work for someone. Sorry. HMS Sin asks, can Headhunter steal the Archnemesis monster's unique modifiers? Oh no.
That's a great question. I remember.
¿Headhunter puede robar los modificadores únicos?
Pretty sure we can't allow that for a variety of reasons.
I mean, they don't want it to. You just fixed a bug.
¡Oh, no! Dice que probablemente sí, pero no deberían hacer, así que lo van a fixear. Y Chris acaba de decir que fixió un bug.
Getting it caught in time. You got a week.
Can a developer who's watching this please fix this? And if you don't, Reddit gets that
no
one.
Probaron si la liga Archnemesis, que tenía nuevos modificadores, pudo funcionar con el ítem más popular de Nemesis.
Good job, Mods. Okay, so I noticed that there are no new skills revealed this time. Why is that?
You weren't supposed to notice.
Oh, it's like that, is it?
We had 13 development weeks for this expansion, and we had a lot of scope. Like, this was one of those big endgame ones with a league that we needed to make, and it just didn't make the scope, right? And we also felt that the game actually has quite a lot of skills, and by buffing 2 significant archetypes so extensively, like, we just literally took dozens of skills and made big improvements to them. This is kind of combined with the new Eldritch implicits that have a lot of build enabling stuff. We're not worried about the game having nothing for people to do. It's a resourcing issue, and pretty much the fact that this isn't, you know, there's going to be plenty of new builds for people to play.
Well, yeah, I can imagine some people are going to be disappointed because a lot of people do specifically want to always play the new skills. But I was speaking to Bex a little bit about this earlier. And she was saying,
dice que no hay nuevos skills porque se tuvieron que enfocar en un montón de otras cosas, pero con todas las cosas que pusieron de ítems y tal, va a haber un montón de builds nuevos que la gente puede hacer.
So it's kind of like a costing decision there.
It certainly is. But it's mostly, we'd rather do this expansion well than make a few skills. And to be honest, like, the number of players who want to specifically play the new skills as a matter of course is only like a small portion of the player base. And I'd rather make content for 100% than for like 7% or whatever. But, you know, obviously will be, you know, skills added to the game in the future. The other thing is, like, you know, occasionally players will say to us, hey, what you should do is not make new skills and instead fix the existing ones. And while that can't be true forever, it is something we've tried to do here. We've tried to take entire archetypes of bow users and
algunos jugadores le dicen, ¿sabes? No hagas nuevos skills, arregla los que están mal. Dijeron, eso fue lo que decidieron hacer esta vez.
New skills, I'm sorry there aren't any in this particular one, but hopefully there are skills that have been new in the past that you haven't tried out yet.
Sacaron el Archnemesis.
Okay. So Ultimatum has not yet made a return, though in some ways Archnemesis does remind me of it. But is there any word on its rework and return?
Ultimatum, vamos a ver.
This was a resourcing issue as well. We realized that to get it in the game in the state we want requires quite a lot of work, and that wasn't going to fit in 3.17 alongside this stuff. The
Ultimatum no alcanzó en el scope, no viene para 3.17.
Ultimatum back in the right form, but it's not this time.
Such.
Potentially a next time, DM. Awakened gems seem to keep getting. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'll bring it back up again anyway. Awakened gems seem to keep getting nerfed. And I'd kind of guessed that with Cyrus and the Conquerors being semi-retired now, I guess, we'd be shifting away from them being a chase or an expected progression for builds. But it seems now that they've been made a drop from the Maven boss fights, they're staying core, somewhat at least. How do you guys feel about Awakened gems in general, and what's the goal with them?
We see them as core, and we think they benefit many builds. In fact, we wish there were more of them that would benefit more builds.
Las Awakened gems parece que están nerfeando, y que están retirados ahora.
This is not a feature.
¿Qué va a pasar con esto en el futuro?
Literally just us thinking aloud. I don't even think we're planning any in the next few
guaranteed
expansions. We think it's important for you to have something that you can get from the Maven that will help improve your late game damage. The boss fights are hard, right? Like you need this. It's punchy. You know, if you can use Awakened gems, you should definitely farm for them and get them.
Ok, dice que las Awakened gems les gusta, es algo que te mejora tu daño y deberías poder obtenerlo en Maven. Y que no le hace daño nada, dice que no tienen pensados hacer nuevas, pero quieren que se queden en el juego.
Awakened gems, are they from the Maven boss fight herself or from the other invitations?
They're from the boss fight itself, and the lesser ones that were previously just dropped by the Conquerors will be available from the regular invitations.
So the Maven herself is the one who drops the good ones, and the lesser ones that were previously from the Conquerors are the ones that come from the invitations.
Ok, las que venían de las Awakened Gems que venían de los Conquerors son de las invitaciones, y Maven es la que dropea las buenas.
Rewards were a little bit underwhelming compared to, say, Cyrus or some of the other bosses.
I think there's also. Yesterday we had this conversation. In fact, I shouldn't be saying stuff like this. We were reading some of the drafts of questions that we may be asked, right? You know, doing our prep for this. And we get to this exact point of what are we doing about Maven rewards with regard to, you know, is the Awakened Gem sufficient?
Si les dropea sus cosas
and we
únicas,
decided to buff a bunch of Maven uniques.
Pero no dropea ni las gemas ni
to get to your exact point that the Maven rewards were underwhelming, there are buffs to those, which were added literally at the last minute in the patch notes. Like the patch notes were approved and done and sent to translators, and the formatting is ready and we're good and we're celebrating. And then someone says, we need to buff these uniques, so everyone gets writing again. And so I hope that actually happens.
Yeah. Oh, that's very good news if so. I hope so too. I'd like to see some spicy chase there for sure. All right. Okay, we've got some more community questions now, a lot. So apparently literally everyone, and I just have to read this proviso first. Bex said we could ask this question, apparently. So I guess blame. Why was this not presented from a hot tub?
Oh, ¿por qué no hicieron esto de una bañera?
Okay, so I have a hot tub at my house, and I hadn't used it in a couple of years. And when we did well, it came with the house, I should add. But when we did the Halloween board, you know, the one that said one gigantic Atlas tree, Bex says, "You're welcome." Oh, cute. Anyway, when we did the Halloween board and we had the stream from a hot tub, because of course that was topical back, you know, a few months ago when we did that, I thought to myself, I bet you I'm going to be asked to do this, and this thing needs cleaning. Like, it's been a few years since anyone used it. This hot tub needs to be sorted out. And so I was sitting there, like, hot summer sun, like, getting sunburnt, scrubbing this hot tub, you know, in my spare time, just in case we needed to do it for this live stream. And then, thankfully, made a judgment call that no, for the sake of a meme, I'm not going to, like, confuse 99% of the players.
Yeah.
But it could have happened. Like, there's a very close parallel reality here.
Yeah, the like 1%
Chris Wilson dijo que sacó tiempo de su tiempo personal para limpiar la bañera que no había usado en años.
Some rule. Like, turns out that's not allowed now or something like that.
Y dijo que si hace un par de días dijo, ¿sabes qué? No voy a hacer esto nada más por un meme. No va a confundir a la mayoría de los jugadores nada más para cumplir con el meme. Y decidió no hacerlo.
Perfect. All right. Someone asks, how does the Ascendancy gems work with the Scion?
I don't think they do. The Ascendancy jewels, the Scion.
Yeah. It works.
Oh, it does? You guys are smart. How does it work?
She has her own set.
Right. She has her own set of special mods.
Oh, las gemas estas que se combinan las dos funcionan con la Scion. Chris Wilson pensó que no funcionaban y dijo, creo que no funcionan. Y después ellos dijeron, sí, sí funcionan. Dice, ¿cómo funcionan? Tienen sus propios mods. Dice, wow, ustedes son inteligentes.
So if you're a Deadeye, you can get a Pathfinder one or a Raider one. You can't get a Juggernaut one as a Ranger.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they do let you splash outside of your Ascendancy class. It enables tons of new builds, but it does not let you get something incredibly off class.
Deadeye, tú puedes tener ascendencias de la Pathfinder o de la o de la Deadeye, o sea, de cualquiera que sea de tu clase. No puedes tener una fuera de tu clase. Pero yo pensé que era de la misma clase.
Oh, wow. Okay.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay, so multiple layers to that. So you can splash stuff from other Ascendancies
Holy
on your character,
shit!
regardless of you not being that Ascendancy. You just have to be a Ranger if you get a Ranger one.
You're getting any Ranger Ascendancy on a Ranger. You don't have to be a Pathfinder to get an additional Pathfinder.
Tú puedes ser una Pathfinder con Poison of Concoction y conseguir un proyectil adicional de la Deadeye.
Wow, okay. It also means from like a farming potential, if you're like wanting to sell these or something, you might want to be like the class that is.
Mira, lo digo de una vez. Los primeros builds van a ser baratos, pero Crocs va a farmear esas cosas y se va a hacer builds. No me importa cuánto cuesten, yo voy a hacer cosas locas, ¿ok?
Okay. I was getting confused between the two things.
No vaya a empezar a decir, Crocs ya no es humilde. Yo voy a hacer builds baratos y después voy a farmear por esas cosas. Y eso va a ser carísimo seguramente.
Okay, alright.
¡Explosiones con el elementalista! ¡Eran los Thunder con explosiones!
And that Ranger one will have any Ranger Ascendancy passive on it, including outside of the person who equips its class. Yeah, I made this more confusing than it needed to be with my explanation here.
I was surprised because we don't normally have tailored drops like that in
no, it's not a tailored drop. It's I'm just clarifying the fact that a Ranger cannot equip a Juggernaut Ascendancy skill from this.
Okay.
Pero una Scion tal vez pueda, ¿no?
Nonetheless, revealed some pretty awesome stuff, so that's exciting. Okay, Lufa asked, can we apply these new Eldritch implicits in unique items? Well, we already answered that one. What happens when we use Chance Orbs on these items? Oh, that's an interesting one. Chance Orb being an item with an implicit existing. Oh, 11 dev checks.
So they can't be chanced into uniques anymore once they've got
It's similar to synthesized items where once they have these on it, you can't chance them into uniques.
Okay.
Destroyed.
No puedes chancear un ítem que tenga esas cosas.
Limited team of developers think of it first. You know, there's millions of you guys, and these guys here are real smart. And
no se puede chancear,
a lot of
desgraciadamente.
people are also asking about tainted currency.
Scion con la defensa del gladiador y ataque de Berserker. O sea, hay tantas posibilidades, dude. Hay tantas.
No more tainted currency for now. For the record, I really like tainted currency, so we may see it again in the future in some form.
No hay más tainted currency de Scourge. Pero dice que a Chris Wilson le gustaba bastante, así que puede que venga en el futuro, de alguna manera. Ojalá vuelva, porque es muy cool. Y siento que no tiene nada negativo, sobre todo que ahorita estamos alejándonos de los ítems corruptos. Creo que es algo que no tiene nada de malo que esté en el juego.
I feel if we made it so it auto picked up items, people would praise it, and then if we made it so that, like, you know, these appear in a spreadsheet rather than a stash tab, people would praise it. And then if we made it so you don't need to log in for it to find the items, people would praise it. And then if it just emails you a daily update of how cool you are.
Calm down.
What? Easier 6 links is going to get praised until the game has no valid progression anymore.
While that may be true, I think this is slightly different because
era chévere tener 6 links fáciles con corruptos y le dices, sí, me decía mejor si se autolootearan los 6L. O mejor aún si cayeran ya 6L. O mejor aún si los dieran sin jugar el juego. O mejor aún no tengas ni que loguearte en el juego y te los den. O mejor aún que no tengas ni que prender tu computadora y te los daban diariamente. Y sí que le dijo, ok, cálmate.
Yeah, I figure, you know, it's going away soon. Why not just give everyone their 6 links pretty easily?
Eso es la clase, claro, pero la Scion tiene todas las clases.
But anyway, okay. All right.
Just saying.
It's us. Would it be possible to color the new implicit text according to the mod? Eldritch blue text and the other one red. Accessibility feature request.
Oh,
you can press Alt to see more information, and that way the item looks normal and easily readable, and you tap Alt and you get a overload of stuff.
Okay.
All right.
We are putting mod description stuff, right?
Also, one's on the top and one's on the bottom.
Yeah.
They're always in the same.
Which one is on the top? Do you remember? There is an order. We'll check it.
Dice, hay un orden de los implícitos de los modificadores estos que vamos a agregar y siempre van a estar de la misma forma, pero también puedes tocar Alt y te va a decir cuál es cuál, pero no va a estar en colores. Me están diciendo que pusieran uno azul y uno rojo. Y dice que prefieren que tengan para que el ítem sea normal.
Hovers. Now it's just mandatory. For some reason, this is the thing we added with a default of off. So a new player installs the game, presses Alt, and doesn't get stuff. And so that's definitely just on with the option removed now. So anyone who hated it for some reason, it's mandatory.
Muy bien, esto es una maravilla. Ahora estaba en off en los mods adicionales que tocabas con Alt y ahora están on para siempre para todos los jugadores.
When you press Alt while looking at an item, it will show the unique name and base type in English in brackets, and so you can Google for them. So, I mean, I guess if you we're having problems with this, you probably can't understand this. But anyway, someone please tell the international players that you can now see what the items are. And this is really important for builds. Like, imagine you're playing the game in a language and you struggle with English, and you find a cool unique, and you're looking at, say, the Russian name for it, and you Google for it to find out what build to play. You won't find the English build guides, whereas now you can find the English one.
Esta es muy buena.
Also added experimental support, like an
Esta es
early
muy buena.
version of Japanese
Los ítems ahora van a decirte el nombre en inglés si tocas Alt. Entonces, si tú estás jugando en español o en lo que sea, tú puedes buscar eso y buscarlo en internet. Si buscas, no sé, suplicio de manos, no te va a salir nada. Pero si buscas Pledge of Hands, puede que te salgan builds que tengan Pledge of Hands. Entonces, eso está muy bueno. Aparte de que tal vez eso, como ya está en el juego, puede que sea support para que la gente que hace, dudo que lo haga, pero que hace, no sé, POV, Awakened Poet Trade, puedan agarrar ese dato y aunque esté en español, te haga lo mismo y puedes hacerlo en otros idiomas, lo cual sería una maravilla. Dudo que lo haga, pero sería cool. Y ya está en el juego, entonces ya es algo que es posible. Antes era completamente imposible.
Yeah, so a lot of Eldritch implicits do not have explicit ranges for the implicits on them because they have 6 different ranks instead. And if they do have ranges, does Blessed Orb reroll them?
If we have any of them that do, they do. I can't confirm that we do have any.
Yeah, so it will work if there are any. We just can't think of any that currently have ranges.
La mayoría de los implícitos no tienen, o sea, de las nuevas influencias no tienen rangos. O sea, son y ya, son 10% más de lo que sea, por ejemplo. Y en el siguiente tier es 15%. Pero si tienen rangos, va a funcionar con una orbe que modifique los implícitos. O sea, olvida el nombre, Blessed Orb.
Like to increase the area level of the area. Are there any ways to do that now? I can't think of any.
Atlas passive for unique maps, but that's about it.
Yeah, there's an Atlas passive for unique maps, but currently no.
Okay, so that kind of maybe answers the other question then, if there's any question.
No hay forma por ahora de modificar el nivel del área. O sea, los mapas tier 16 van a ser 16. Hay un pasivo en el Atlas que te mejora el item level y el nivel de los mapas únicos, pero no de los normales.
Like the previous era of dropping an entirely new endgame every year may not necessarily happen a year from now. I mean, the goal basically is to continue working on this one because we like it and try to incrementally improve it in each expansion rather than dropping a completely new one each year. We think that will actually give people a lot more to work towards in the endgame with each league, as opposed to just seeing the league content and trying out a couple of new builds. We actually give them some new stuff to do in the endgame as well.
There was a lot of talk about, like, well, there's major damage buffs for hand casting and bow builds.
Dice que el cambio del endgame probablemente no suceda de un año para acá. Dice que le gustó bastante este y la idea es que trabajen sobre este.
Regarding mobility and defense options for hand casters.
We did a massive defense buff in one of the recent expansions, and as you'll notice, we didn't nerf any of that. So, well, I don't know, maybe we did, but I don't think we nerfed any of that. And so, no, the answer is we don't have any improvements in this expansion beyond the ones that we listed in the manifesto. I mean, the full patch notes are coming out very soon, so there may be bits and pieces that I'm unaware of, but yeah, you've heard the majority of that stuff that affects that.
All right. Shade Finale asks, is Elevated Nemesis also removed from the game? You said only Awakened Nemesis specifically in the video. I don't actually know what that means.
Nemesis.
Referring to Sextants?
Sextants.
Maybe? Sorry, you said Awakened Nemesis? An Elevated Nemesis?
This is Elevated Nemesis. Nem 4? Chat's typing? What does that mean?
No, sigue, está muy mal, dude. No sabe lo que es Nemesis 4.
The Elevated Sextant does not give that mod anymore.
Pero los Sextants ya no dan ese mod. Básicamente los removieron del pool.
Alright. Pie by Pie asks, does quest tracking help guide us through the new Atlas and bosses?
I believe it will do, right? New Atlas quests. Do they have a quest tracker?
Yes.
Yep.
los quests se van a llevar así como se llevan los quests viejos.
Wrap things up, Signal. So I'll ask a big question.
Y va a funcionar con los nuevos quests.
Reports on hard mode. It was said to be happening early to mid this league, right?
Hard mode.
Still the case.
We really expect hard mode to be in some form of early testing before the next live stream, or we'll be releasing it at the next league. Right? I'm going to make sure that one of these two happens. So the full pick. And people, like, there's face pounding going on. Because it's a lot of work, right, to finish it. It's been taking a while.
Creo que hard mode él va a buscar de que esté o en forma de testeo antes de la próxima liga o que salga en el próximo live stream. Y se volteó y dijo, están poniéndose las manos en la cabeza.
Kind of a follow-up to some stuff that was started earlier as well. Is there any more, like, Act 3 work planned?
So there's a bunch of work that happened in Act 2 in this expansion, I believe. But it's not as extensive as the Act 1 stuff that we did before. Can you clarify?
That is correct. Just a resourcing issue.
Yeah, resourcing basically is that us revamping the earlier acts is like the last thing on the list of things we want to get. I mean, we want to get to it, but it gets pushed out each time relatively easily. So,
y si quieren mejorar los actos, o sea, hacerlo más difícil básicamente. Pero dice que está empujándolo porque no les alcanzan los recursos para hacerlo.
Or PoE2 news as well that they can like keep an eye out for.
Noticias
They're
para
both
Exile 2.
coming along really well. We decided not to include any content in this particular live stream, both because it was already very featureful and because we'd honestly rather get more stuff to show you guys. And you know, there's still a way on both projects, right? Like, you know, they're not being released this year. Very likely, I mean, our internal target that we're looking at is tentatively the end of next year, right? So that's could change, but that's what we're looking at.
Esto es
So I would
importantísimo.
expect a good year of clear, like, hype marketing for those as we get closer to them, and that year hasn't quite started. So we may do an update in the interim.
Dicen que van
It
bastante
really
bien en
depends,
Exile
and
2.
I kind of feel it's one of those things where we don't want to just drip feed tiny little bits and pieces, because if we like, it's PoE2 stuff, and then we show you a small thing, people will say, is that literally all you've done in the last year? And it, you know, gives the wrong impression. So I would rather actually have something impactful to show.
Okay,
And, you know, making a
básicamente,
PoE2 trailer takes
Exile 2
a
dice que
lot
va
of
bastante
work.
bien, pero que no tienen nada para mostrarles ahorita, porque nos quieren mostrar pequeñas cosas. Quieren agarrar y mostrarles algo que sea impactante. Y que internamente ellos están esperando que Exile 2 salga para el final del año que viene. O sea, finales de 2023. Más o menos lo que hemos estado hablando aquí en el stream. Que yo estoy diciendo, ¿sabes? 2023, tal vez principios de 2023 puede que tengamos alguna beta o algo así, pero no creo que sea antes. Más o menos, le pegué más o menos.
There was 10 more questions, folks. Thank you all for asking them. I tried to get through as many as I could, but we are holding up the patch notes. So thank you very much for your time, Chris. We're going to let you go. And you can go get those patch notes out. Press the button, please.
Right, enjoy the league, everyone.
Las patch notes ya vienen en camino, así que probablemente estén para ahorita. Ok. Muy bien. Bueno, primero que todo, unos buenos aplausos. Me parece que estuvo buena la presentación. ¿Qué opinas? Yo digo que estuvo muy bueno. Muy bueno. ¿Claps? Claps. Me parece que estuvo buena la presentación. Lástima que no vimos cositas de Exile 2, Ultimatum, y hay cosas podemos decir que faltaron y que nos sentimos mal por eso, pero siento que todo lo que nos dieron está bastante bien, así que eso me agrada bastante. Siento que fue una buena decisión agarrar poquitas cosas, pero que sean muy buenas, así que eso me alegra mucho. Mira, van a radiar a Nugien, qué maravilla. Qué cool. Imagínense que la página oficial de un juego raidee a alguien que hace contenido para el juego, pero no trabaja con ellos. Muy bien, me agrada mucho esto. Ahorita, por supuesto, vamos a agarrar y vamos a revisar esto como 50.000 veces para sacar teorías y conclusiones y todo esto, pero estoy muy feliz con esto. Voy a cortar aquí el video de reacción, así que ya voy a ponerle voz de ardilla para todos los que quieran ponerme voz de ardilla, ¿ok? Y a felicitar todos los subs. Muchas gracias.